Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Nathan Hill. I'm joined here by the lovely Jeff Giddens.
Hello,
we are
Nathan.
super excited to talk to you about 5 emails that you should never send to your donors. It's actually going to be more like 7 emails, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. Before we dive into the content, into the details, into the emails you shouldn't send, let's talk about a couple housekeeping things. The most popular question that we ever get is, are you recording this? Are you going to send me a video?
Is that kind of depressing that that's the most popular question we ever get?
Sometimes. I would hope there's
so,
more in-depth questions, but we get
Everyone asks, so we answer.
The answer is yes, we are recording this. Riley, are we recording this? We're recording it. Confirmed. Officially, you will have a recording that we can send you later this evening. So around 5 p.m. Central Time, you'll get an email from me, Nathan at NextAfter.com. And I will share a link to a page that has the video recording. It has the slide decks. It has any additional resources that we mentioned today and some other ways we can follow up. And we have additional time and intentional time for question and answer today. So all throughout the webinar, if you have questions, go to your Zoom toolbar. You can click the little Q&A button. You can send in your questions that way. If you put them in the chat, I mean, we'll try to watch them, but the best way to guarantee that we see them is to put them in the Q&A. Use the chat window to drop in your comments, share your commentary, talk with other attendees and fundraisers joining in the webinar today, but put your questions in the Q&A box. Then we'll have time at the end for Jeff and I both to go through those and get you some answers. If this is your first time on a NextAfter Institute webinar, our mission is to decode what works in fundraising and equip as many fundraisers and nonprofit organizations and as many people as possible with what we're learning works to unleash greater generosity and giving. Now, how we do that is primarily through research. This is kind of the backbone of everything that we do. And we have 2 different types of research. We have what we call forensic research, which is where we go out into the marketplace and become mystery donors to analyze the giving experience of, say, 100 organizations to see what is it like to actually be a donor and give a gift. Is it hard? Is it difficult? Can you actually make a gift? What does follow-up communication look like? So we take that research coupled with what Jeff really does every day, which is A/B testing and optimization primarily with lots of different organizations to see what actually works.
That's right. I think we fundamentally believe that we can't declare what works. We just have to go find out from the donors, and testing is the way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's cool to see all these new ideas through the forensic research, couple that with the testing to really try to move things forward and increase generosity. So then from the research, we produce resources like this webinar. But we also produce ebooks and how-to guides and templates and podcasts and lots of ways that you can dive deeper to understand how to grow giving. And then finally, we produce more higher level certification courses that are available on demand, as well as live workshops where you can get certified in email fundraising or donation pages and more. And then we have our annual nonprofit innovation and optimization summit. So these are all ways that you can get equipped with data-driven and proven tactics and strategies to grow your fundraising. Now, I already said I'm Nathan. This is Jeff. Jeff is our president here at NextAfter. Jeff, what do you do here?
My job is to work with the clients who hire us to help optimize their fundraising programs and make numbers go up and to the right on the chart forever. So that's what we do every day, is we try to go find new ways to acquire more names, donors, and dollars, and kind of engineer these optimizations into organizations to lift revenue for more impact.
Love it. And I'm really excited to have you on today to talk about some of these specific examples, because you're in the weeds every day. You see some of these pretty rough email examples. I'm sure you see some of the best email examples. So your perspective will be really, really valued today, I'm sure. Let's look at sort of where we're going through the rest of our time together. What you're going to learn today is what I'm calling the fundamental, not so secret, super easy to follow, but surprisingly hard to implement rule of effective email fundraising. I tried to make it really simple for you to remember and for you to say and to share with your friends. But that's where we're going. And to do that, we're going to look at 5 not so great examples from our aggregate donor inbox. So real emails that we have seen both from nonprofits and a couple for-profits that just illustrate some interesting points, and hopefully will make you laugh a little bit too.
Nathan, what is the aggregate donor inbox? People may be wondering right now.
That's a good question. The aggregate donor inbox is really this massive inbox that we have. So when we go out and we make donations to 100 organizations or 600 organizations, we give them our email address, and all their emails funnel to this inbox so we can go monitor all the communication that we're actively receiving from these studies. So we dive in there to do some interesting research, to do some analysis, or to grab some of our favorite examples that we can throw into a webinar like this.
I kind of wonder sometimes if it is the most solicited email address in the world. That may be something we want to have like the Guinness Book look into or something like that.
Interesting.
Awards.
We'll have to do that.
All right.
And as I said, we really have 7 examples for us to look at today. But first, I want to start with a little bit of an exercise. And I truly want to know, how would you improve this email campaign? This is an email we'd look at in our email workshop, typically at the very beginning. But I want to give it to you today just to take a quick look at. And feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat. And we'll be watching some of those come in. But I'm curious what you would do to improve this email. So I'll pull up my chat window. But you can see at the very top, you've got this big logo, the Family Life logo, and you've got a stock image and a little headline, at least it appears to be a stock image, a Donate Now button, HTML button, and then below that, you have the copy. The copy's below it, it's got a salutation, you've got this long hyperlinked sentence, maybe 2 sentences, you've got the Your Gift Now hyperlink, Donate Now button at the bottom. We won't go through the weeds of the copy, but there's a testimonial woven in there. The call to action, Your Gift Now will make a huge difference for a pastor couple, their church, and the community that they serve. So this is version A. This is the original. What would you do to improve it? I see from Amanda, she says, make the logo smaller. Photo of people, maybe make it larger for starters. Put the impact first, strip out the design, make the Donate Now button a stronger color. So lots of interesting ideas here. Make it look more personal. Move the Donate Now button toward the middle of the copy, shorten the URL link. Lots and lots of ideas. So there's tons of ways that you can look at this and come up with new ideas to hopefully optimize this email. But I want to look at what they actually tested. So this was an A/B test. This is the original version of the email. This is the treatment version of the email. So this is the new idea that they came up with. They thought had a chance to increase giving. If you're not familiar with what an A/B test is, essentially they split the traffic. They split their email file in 2. 50% got the original, 50% got the treatment. They sent it at the same time, and then they monitored results to see which one was the winner. And are you ready for the result? Version B, the treatment, led to a 272% increase in donations. Now, it's noteworthy that they didn't add any additional incentives. There's no premium or anything like that you could get for giving. It had the same donation offer, so it's really going to the same fund. It's going to the same common cause. It was sent from the same sender, so the sender email address and name was exactly the same, no changes there. And it was the same core value proposition message, maybe presented it a little bit differently in version B than version A, but it's truly the same core message and the same core cause. However, again, version B led to this huge increase in donations. Obviously, the question we have to ask is this: why? Why would this win? And are there core principles that we can apply to have a better indicator of what's going to work in the future? And I would submit to you that email marketing demands trust. This is one core principle that we live by in all of our marketing, especially email. But what's interesting about email specifically is that there's a unique power that the recipient has, because they can just unsubscribe. They can't necessarily unsubscribe from, say, like Facebook advertising or display advertising that follows them around the internet.
Billboards on the side of the highway. You can't
Right.
unsubscribe from that.
Because you
right?
stop driving on that road or something.
Maybe so.
It's other consequences.
That's what it takes.
But here you can just click a button and unsubscribe. So we have to build trust. This is an interesting experiment from Dallas Theological Seminary. North Texas Giving Day is kind of like a localized Giving Tuesday in a sense, where all these organizations in North Texas are sort of coming together to raise funds together at the same time and hopefully build off others' success. It's a great opportunity to grow giving. But on this day, what they wanted to do was reduce the amount of unsubscribes. They figured if we send this email to our email file, there's going to be people that still want to follow us, but may not want to get more emails about North Texas Giving Day.
Because they may not live in North Texas. That was one of the big hypotheses behind this.
Yeah.
Was they had a nationwide audience, people who would come on, So yes, you want to segment to North Texas the best you can, but sometimes people just want to, pause emails about this specific campaign.
Right. It makes a ton of sense, but they also wanted to test it to see, this is a great idea, it's a great hypothesis, but does it actually work? So they put it to the test. Version A is just their regular email appeal they sent out. Version B is the same exact email. Everything is the same except for this at the very bottom. It says, if you can't join us this North Texas Giving Day, click here and I'll remove you from these messages. They still had the unsubscribe option below in the footer, but adding this little note, what it did was actually decrease total unsubscribes by 33%. And they're building trust through things like this. Again, people still want to follow them, but just don't want to get badgered with more donation asks that aren't necessarily relevant to them. Or maybe they've decided, I just can't give right now. So you're building trust by giving these types of options. And we have to build this trust to not get marked as spam.
Correct.
Now, if we don't build trust, there can be consequences. So we have this a partner we work with from time to time that has this really cool tool where you can sort of measure email volume as well as engagement rates and really the health of your overall email program, which is pretty powerful. It's a pretty unique tool. On your screen in front of you, the blue chart in the background represents total amount of emails being sent, email volume. So every time you see one of those big spikes, that's more emails that are being sent out. The green line is the read rate. So these are the amount of people that are actually opening and seeing the content of your email. And then the delete rate is just that. It's how many people are actually deleting the email rather than just reading it and accepting it. They're getting rid of it entirely. So if you look at the trend, if you squint and you kind of look at the trends, you can kind of see that delete rates are going up and read rates are going down. But I want to highlight a couple of things in this chart for you. And at the very beginning, you see this kind of big gap. It'll come up on my screen. You see this gap, it's like this period of silence. So they stopped emailing for a period of time. And you can see the delete rates then jump right up when they start emailing again. Read rates are falling down. If we keep moving through this timeline, you've got this period where there are a lot of donation appeals actually being sent, and you see delete rates shooting way up and read rates going down. And then you get towards the end of this, I think this is a full year period, full year cycle. You have this prolonged period of disengagement. So you go through periods of not sending and then sending only donation asks, and overall your deletes are going up, your reads are going down. Higher deletes, lower engagement. And let's overlay one more thing on this chart that's really interesting. We call this inboxing. Jeff, what do we mean when we talk about inboxing?
Yeah, so the term people used to use was deliverability, right? Which meant, can I even get this to someone's email address, or will it get rejected? And now, because you have, especially in Gmail, like the social and the promotions inbox, the question is, can I get it to their inbox? Can I get it past spam? And so inboxing becomes important because someone has so much of a lesser chance of seeing it if it gets into one of those, that you want to get things into their inbox. And that what we found through testing and research really in data like this, that is an earned opportunity, right? So you have to do the right things in order to get to the inbox, because if you don't get to the inbox, especially as the volume of overall emails goes up from for-profit marketers, spammers, phishing attempts, there's more noise in the marketplace.
Right.
So you have to work a little bit harder to get that inbox, but that's what inbox placement percentage is.
And so then you can start to see that, as you are sending more email that's irrelevant or isn't building trust, you also see this inboxing score start to go down. So we're kind of weighting the score with this chart. At the top, at the very start, you see the 78% weighted inboxing, and then at the very end, it drops to a 48%, which is a significant drop off. It's going to really harm your ability to reach donors, actually get your message seen, let alone get a donation. You're just trying to get visibility in the inbox. And because you're not building trust, it's decreasing engagement. So email marketing demands trust, and it demands engagement. People have to be actively engaging with you because you've built trust with them. But the main question is obviously, how do you do that? You can't just go out and do it without a plan. How do you do it? Here's what we've started to learn. If we look at this A/B test, this is from CaringBridge. Do you want to talk about this experiment?
Yeah. So CaringBridge was sending this appeal, and then they do these appeals 3 to 4 times a year, and they had a match from this appeal from a board member. And they wanted to feature the board member in some way. They sent an email from a board member, and they had this kind of designed template, right? That the picture of the board member there, kind of next to a family that had been a recipient of this. And, the real question was, do we need to show who this person is in order to, if we're trying to write like this person, like this board member, his name was Rick, do we need to show him? And then what sort of tone do we need to use? And so this is actually a radical redesign. There are a lot of things that happen in the treatment. First off, the image was stripped away, which a lot of y'all said in the chat when we were talking about how to optimize an email. And second, the tone of the email totally shifted. You kind of went from this copy that when we read it out loud really sounded kind of like marketing, like it kind of gave itself away, to some copy that was a little more, it kind of passed the sniff test in terms of humanization. And you can still see there are things, there is an image in the treatment. There is a a yes, double my donation button. There's a signature at the bottom. So some of those elements were kept. But overall, when we sent the second email, number one, 80% increase in clicks. And number two, a 112% increase in donations. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the marketing got out of the way. You know, sometimes marketers and donors look at emails differently. And the marketer might say, hey, this accomplishes our organizational goal. It looks very clean. It's in our template. But the problem is someone on the other end of this email might look at it differently and say, hey, this doesn't sound like it was written to me. I don't necessarily believe this is coming from a person because I don't know many people. I don't know if you do this, Nathan, but when you send an email about from yourself, you also include a picture of yourself.
Normally, and lots of big buttons to click on the links that might be
right. Every time my mom emails me, she loads it into this template that is pictures of her. It's really weird.
My mom does the same thing.
I know, it's really bizarre. But anyways, you know, what we're doing is we're stripping away some of the marketing, right? Because what we're trying to do is get people to trust another person. That person is making a relevant ask to them. And the data shows that the donors will return that trust in spades.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible. And this experiment is, I think the design is basically the only difference. And then they have this second iteration of it, where they then dove into the copy as you're talking about.
Right.
So the design makes a huge difference how it appears.
This was a different email. So this, you know, it started off with some copy that was a little troublesome. When your world has been turned upside down, every connection counts. That sounds a lot like marketing language, right? Like kind of jargony, things like that. And
I like to say it kind of sounds like a local news commercial a bit to me.
Your world has been turned upside. Yeah.
That's the voice.
And it also, you know, there are some things like the logo and the button in this first email. And, you know, the concept was, well, can we talk to this person and help them understand first why Kelly, this member of the development team, might be writing them, right? Like, let's establish some relevancy or some sort of shared communication. And starts with, I know you've been using CaringBridge recently to stay connected, because we did. This was a list of people who had used CaringBridge recently, right? So you kind of take that throughout all of the copy, and you know, you remove the button, you replace it with just that link. You move the logo to the signature block, which is kind of where it naturally comes if people have a logo. And obviously, you know, trying to produce a more human result.
And the result. Drum roll, please. There we go.
Can I do this on my mic? How does that work?
Yeah. The mic a little bit. 145% increase in donations by taking that more human style approach, not just to the design, but also to the copy and to the tone and to the narrative, and just sounding like a regular person sending a regular email to a regular person.
Yeah, it's surprisingly hard to do.
Right. It really is. And that's what hopefully we'll illustrate here. One more experiment before we sort of dive into some of the more fun examples. Is this applies also to the sender name. It applies to the whole envelope, the sender, the subject line, the preview text. This is an interesting example where in version A, it's sent from an organization name, Competitive Enterprise Institute. Version B is sent from a human. Surprise, surprise, you get an email from a human, Kent Lastman. Now you see the preview text is a little bit different because they also were trying in the copy to be a little bit more human as well. So it's holistic, has to be a holistic approach. But the primary change here that is really clear and visible is the sender name. And when we look at them side by side, they ran this test. Version B, sent from the person, led to a 28% increase in email opens. So from the envelope level all the way down, you have to create this. The commonality is it's a more human, personal approach. So again, this experiment was, we'll just say 100% more like a human. And then this iteration was 100%.
Ballpark it, yeah.
It's a rough estimate. But these are all more like a human, and that's what led to the ultimate result of an increase in donations and opens and clicks and all those things. So the fundamental, not so secret, it's not a secret that you should write like a human being to human beings. It's super easy to follow because we're all humans and we all write regular, normal emails, but it's also surprisingly hard to implement this effective rule of email fundraising, which is that people give to people, not to email marketing machines. Or
faceless organizations, or you know, giant institutions, even causes. You know, people. I think that's the hardest part of it, Nathan, is as marketers, we feel like we have a job to do as marketers. And so like, if I'm going to do my job and write this marketing email, then I need to start marketing. That's radically different than what we would do. You know, the example I always use is if you could have one-on-one conversations with every person on your email list, you would not talk like that, right? And so it is hard. This comes from radio. I used to be in public radio. And when we would get volunteers in the studio to talk on the radio, they would freeze up and they would freak out. And they was like, I'm talking to thousands of people.
Yeah.
And we'd remind them that not that many people are listening right now, maybe over a week's time, yes, but not right now.
Yeah.
And number two, just act like you're talking to me. Like, I'm right here, talk to me, and don't worry about everyone else listening in, you know? And so that is kind of the principle of stripping that away is like, hey, yes, you're a marketer and you know the size of your email file and who that's going to go to.
Right.
But ultimately, one person is going to receive every one of those emails.
Yep.
Right? They're not receiving it in some sort of large group. And so trying to talk to that person, and you're always doing that, even if you're not asking for money in your messaging, you're always trying to activate or move one person to care a little bit more about your cause.
Right. Those are great points. And again, it's so hard to actually do that in reality because we've trained ourselves to write a certain way. We need to untrain ourselves, retrain ourselves to be just regular people. So it's surprisingly hard to implement. Just to show that, Jeff and I and all of us at NextAfter are not immune from these things. We make mistakes and we are always learning.
There's no vaccine.
No, there's not. No, there's not. But this experiment is interesting where we thought we were pretty savvy marketers. It was version A, the preview text, which says, "Happy Friday, Jane. I hope you had a good week. I want to share a few of our latest posts with you," is just a normal copy from the email. It's like the first sentence and a half. Version B, we thought, well, okay, what if we customize the preview text to start to give a preview of some of the specific resources that we're sending, because we thought this is a better way to show people what's in there and get prompt more opens, et cetera, et cetera. And what we saw was by applying our marketing intuition, we saw a 9% decrease in email opens. Because which one looks more like marketing and which one looks more like it's sent from a human being to a human being?
I think it's subconscious to people too. I don't think it's something people look at and say,
yeah,
that's marketing. I think they just know.
Right.
They read it and they say, this isn't for me or this is for me. It's like the type 1 thinking, the lizard brain, where it's like, we see so much marketing every day that it's like watching a television show. When it flips to another part of the show or when it switches to a commercial, right? You just know.
And you just tune it out.
It's different, right?
Even like ads on a website and things like that, we've trained our brains to not even see them in many
Banner
cases.
blindness, right?
So that's one example of how we're right here with you, trying to figure this out, trying to be more like real people. This example is not so much an A/B test. It was just we attempted to send a very personal email, and this is not a dynamic first name field that you see on your screen. We screwed up. I screwed up, and we sent an email.
Unbelievable, Nathan.
List. I know.
I'm just now learning of this.
Still here.
Very mad about it.
But it says, I have a quick question for you this morning. First name, and everybody just got called first name. It didn't actually work. The field was broken.
Raise your hand on Zoom if you've done this. It's okay. You're among friends, right?
Probably. I just see the screen.
The whole screen is now covered in hands. We can no longer see.
All of our slides.
Amazing. This is like a therapy group. Hi. Hello.
Oh,
hello.
man. It's been.
I too have sent first name.
We've had a broken first name field. So we screwed up. We do this. We also tried to send a very human apology in this case. And so here, I'll highlight a couple things. We intentionally broke the first name field in the apology as kind of like a joke. Whether that was right or wrong, this is what we did. Thought it was kind of funny. And then said, just kidding. I know it's Nathan. I know it's you, Nathan. And then it addresses the first name, Nathan, 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 all throughout, just to re-emphasize the point, like, hey, we're people. We messed up. We made a mistake, but we do know you. We do care about this relationship, because it is a relationship that you're building over email. So we can still attempt, even in our apologies when we make these mistakes, to try to be humans. One more, again, just to show that we are by no stretch perfect. This was a couple of weeks ago. I sent an update, a reminder about a workshop that we hosted at the end of January. I said, hey, it's happening today, but I sent it the day before. We screwed up, so I had to send an apology email. This stuff happens all the time. We don't want it to happen all the time, but this is the reality of humans being in charge of marketing programs. Is you have to act like a human. And sometimes you send the wrong email. Sometimes you say the wrong thing.
Humans make mistakes. Nathan, I was just thinking about this. Maybe this year at Neo Summit, we should have like a email marketing get out of jail free card that we can give to everyone who attends, and they can give that to their boss maybe one day in order to say, hey, I just sent out an email with first name instead of personalization, but the guys at Neo Summit and NextAfter gave me this card to give to you. It's like a golden ticket for Willy Wonka.
I love it.
Okay, we'll work on that.
We will. Hopefully it'll help you out next time you have a broken first name field.
Yep.
So what we're going to do for the rest of our time before we get to some Q&A is look at actually 7 different examples. So you're already getting more than what you signed up for. So
bonus.
Congratulations. We're going to look at 7 examples I'm going to start us off with just one. It's short, sweet. I think it's kind of fun and is in the same vein of like sometimes we just screw up and we have to accept it. What we're not going to do with looking at these examples is shame anybody. So what we're trying to do is blur out logos, blur out names, not roast anyone in particular. What we want to do is just show like we're humans, we make these mistakes, and there's ways to do it.
Yeah, we're trying to do it in good fun. And to be clear, a lot of these emails were actually a couple of years old. As I was going through them, I realized like people are getting better at this.
Yeah.
We had to go back to dig some, right? So there are some old emails on here, from folks. And again, our point is we've tried to make light of ourselves. We try to take our work very seriously and ourselves not so much. And we don't want anyone to feel like we're picking on anybody by doing this. But what we found is that we can learn a lot from mistakes.
Sure.
And so we want to lean into things that we feel like, could have been done better as we look at some of these. So
without further ado, here's example number one. I'm calling this the button, which is very fun.
It's one of my favorites.
The email copy is fine. We're not going to dive into the specifics of it. It looks like a pretty normal email. It's pretty copy focused, copy centric, not crazy design heavy, which is good. Maybe you might get rid of some of the social icons if you're trying to just drive somebody to make one decision and actually give a gift. But let's zoom in a little bit, because when you get to the call to action, it doesn't really matter what you've done in your copy. Where's the call to action? The button literally just says button. Womp womp. This is a downside of some email templates.
I love it.
Hard to see
I think we should test it. Yeah. Maybe it's more human because they can see it. But
Maybe.
Yeah, button copy matters. We have a
Yep.
couple experiments in the library to show that. We'll look at another one here in a little bit. But
Yeah.
the button. I'm not sure. I won't ask for a raise of hands on this one if you ever sent out the button. But
I don't know if I've sent a button, but certainly had missing links. And
yeah, I think the principle that you want to say here is that if you have a call to action, you should call someone to action, right? And there are different things that you should do. You can look through the research library on nextafter.com to even see what are some, even if I don't put button on the button, there are things that I can learn from what should be on the button, and maybe ways to motivate more people to click that button or motivate more motivated people to click that button.
Right.
So a lot to learn from that.
If anyone's keeping track of how many times we've said the word button per minute, I would love to know that stat. If
Yep.
you drop that in the chat. That's all we have for number one. Just kind of a fun one to get going.
All right.
But you pulled this one. I'm curious your thoughts on this one.
Well, this one was special.
Quicker if you'd like.
I will. This one was special. So obviously it was a Giving Tuesday email. We've redacted the organization name to protect the innocent. And this GIF was at the top of the email, or GIF. I don't know what, it's like a personality test. I say GIF too, but I heard it was GIF. But
I heard the opposite.
anyways, we can obviously see very clearly that this is from makeagif.com, because that is where the GIF was made. And it had motion in the email, which is kind of cool because you don't open a lot of emails expecting to see like moving parts, right? But we do know that as this experiment shows, as we looked at earlier, removing an image, especially as we talked about inboxing, helps with deliverability, and that gets reflected, it helps with inboxing, that gets reflected in open rates, right? You see a larger, the amount of people who receive the email obviously leads to more people being able to open the email, even if the subject line and sender are kept the same. And so, starting off with an image might not be the greatest opportunity. So not only do you have this moving image at the top, but you've also got some copy. So we're going to zoom in on the copy here and say, we've had Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Now Giving Tuesday is finally here. Giving Tuesday is your chance to give back and make a difference. We looked at this email. I think one of the things that stuck out was like, give back and make a difference. Like there are hundreds and thousands of organizations who could say they make a difference, right? So the question is, what do you specifically do? And what sort of difference can I make, right? It is my chance to give back and make a difference, but how? Why should I give to you as opposed to someone else or some other organization, or not at all? And then you see the button says give. And I kind of alluded to this earlier on the button. But we've done a lot of testing on buttons, because buttons, they can be useful in email. Sometimes it lets people see a nice area where they should click. But I want to show you this experiment where we had this button that was Save a Child, and the hypothesis was that this button was not clear enough what you're trying to do. Now, the proposed test here was, well, we should just make it clear what we're asking them to do, which is give, right, even though Save the Child is like the net effect of giving, sure, right? Maybe possibly more emotionally motivating or things like that. So we put this give button out there, and saw a 31% decrease in the revenue per visitor. And unless it's asterisked, just so you know, every time we show these percentage increases or decreases, they're statistically valid. They've been seen by enough people, and the level of confidence has been validated through both sample size and difference in conversion rate. So all this to say, give may actually undersell what you're asking someone to do, because if they're asking them to, if you're asking them to make a gift to have an impact, maybe it's better to actually talk about the impact they can have, right, to inspire them. But going back to this email, our work, you kind of pointed this out before. It's like our work would not be possible without you. So it's kind of us first, then you. And so, like, instead of, another way to say this might be, you can make this possible. We've got some tests that show that. Yeah. And then, this is actually some good value proposition. I wanted to find something in here like, government financial data that's truthful, timely, and transparent. It's actually a really cool organization. Yeah. We zoom down in the email. They actually have an array, which is kind of fascinating. And when you click this array, you actually get to go to the donation page. One thing that was noted was that it didn't actually select the amount. That may be on purpose, I don't know. But what will you give to help us make a difference? So before it was I can make a difference. Now it's to help us make a difference, and there's some positioning stuff there. We have a couple tests that show occasionally with diminishing returns that kind of unusual numbers can work. We also have some experiments on donation pages that show that people anchor more to like round numbers, increments of 25, 50, 100, things like that. So maybe something worth testing. Sure. And I think the thing that was most challenging about this email was it really made me think and like start doing math. And I get what they were trying to do, is trying to give some context for like why these numbers. So why $41? Well, it's every state in our most recent financial state of the states that had a taxpayer burden. Like, I think the hard part is, like, I'm so far down the rabbit hole now. Yeah. That it is not necessarily marketing centric speak. It's just kind of organizational centric speak, sure, right? And maybe an approach that we have a ton of research, emerging research around, is like making a very specific ask that's based around their previous giving. Yeah. And then that could explain. It could, instead of giving them 4 options, it could just explain 1 option. So
sure, that makes sense.
A couple of things to improve in that email, but a couple of things that you may want to take and test, and you may want to say, hey, we've been doing this. We never thought about this in this way. So a couple options there. Nathan, your baton.
This one's kind of fun. So number 3, what I'm calling the we appeal. There's a few things I want to call out in it that are noteworthy about trying to make it more human. It's sent from an info@ email address. And normally if you're sending a humanized email, I mean, the primary goal of email as a medium, as a channel, is to get a reply. But now if I'm replying, I don't know who I'm replying to.
I'll say this. Yeah, the primary goal of most emails, like when you send an email to someone you're wanting to hear from, is to get a reply. Yeah. Like that sort of disappears when you become a marketer. Right. Because we're now informing them or marketing to them, yep, rather than engaging in a conversation. So that's a great like underlying point, Nathan, is for some reason we change our expectations of the medium when we become marketers, yeah, right?
For whatever reason, and to our detriment. So don't send from an info@, send from an actual person.
My personal favorite is do not reply.
Yes.
Like, don't even think about it. Like, not a person.
Give us money or get out. Is what those say to me.
I will tell you.
So send from a human being. Number 2, design wrapper. We've talked about this already. Design wrapper, branding, colors, etc. Maybe get rid of those. It's going to look more personal. Number 3, you've got this little call out box at the top that I'm not sure how well this is going to display on a mobile device or even across different browsers. Maybe they've spent hours and hours and hours to do browser testing to get that right. Maybe that's not worth it based on some of our other experiments. But you're asking someone to donate before they've even read why they should. So I don't have enough information to really make a decision. So I'm probably going to decide no. Yep. So I wouldn't put that ask up top, and I also wouldn't use this kind of graphical box to do it. But what I really want to call your attention to is what Jeff was mentioning in the previous email, is the we problem. So I've highlighted every instance in this email where they say our or we, and most of it is like, last week we kicked off our campaign, our 2018 annual fund, our most important fundraising, we're counting on you, support of our mission. And you keep going down and everything is about like what we're doing, our mission, our fund, etc. It's very organizational focused, not very focused on what you, the donor, can do. In their defense, I will highlight all the yous, and it does kind of even out to about the same. Mm-hmm. However, almost every instance of the word you is basically saying, we're counting on you giving us money for us to do our thing. So it's not about you. It's like you are a means for us to do something. It's not empowering you to do something. And even when you get down here, I would negate all of these yous because it says, if you made your gift already, thanks. I deeply appreciate it. But if you haven't, please make your annual contribution now. So you're telling people in the email, we don't really know you super well. We aren't even really paying attention to know if you've given or not, whether or not you have the tech infrastructure to be able to like get the list really quick and update your copy and all that. What the messaging here communicates is we don't really know you, but we want your money, which is not building.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily bad. Sometimes that happens with direct mail, especially where it's like if you've mailed in a gift, you know, but being very specific about mailing in a gift, right? Because there may be two things that happen there. Number one, people who are check writers might actually go mail their gift in. And number two, you sort of subtly explain why you haven't gotten that data yet. You know, people understand. So.
Yeah, which is what a person would do in a conversation also.
Absolutely.
So just continuing that theme here. So anyway, we want to focus our copy around the donor and not about us, the organization, but about you, the donor. And here's one just quick experiment. We didn't run this one. It's in our library. It's pretty interesting, but just you don't have to know the details of the copy to understand what's happening. In version A, it says our strength, our mission, us. We were here, we were here, we were here, we were there, we were here, we moved, we still will be here. It's all about us and what we're doing. Version B, they changed the copy to be more you focused. All those we were here's got replaced with you did this, you were asked, you worked, you were there, you were there, you were there. And just by changing and flipping the copy and the focus of the copy in some really simple ways led to a 281% increase in donations. We need to make sure our language is not focused on us and what we want to do, but on you, the donor, and what you can do, how we can empower you to make an impact on the cause you care about.
Love that test. Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
All right. Again, not going to name names, but I think it's important to note that this email was sent in 2016. So there's a 5-year statute of limitations on the critique. This is also from a group, you might say, maybe you call like an association of people who fundraise for a living. So you might say they're fundraising professionals. This is a fundraising email. I'm only saying this because I know a lot of these people who work at this organization, and I think they would laugh too. So a couple of things about this email. Number one, the header of this email says, support this organization. It's a win-win, right? But it doesn't explain why, like what makes this a win-win. So maybe that's kind of a teaser text. Maybe that was put there in the email to pop up in the preview pane. I'm not sure. But you know, win-win is like very jargony. It, you know, you might say that often, but you kind of use it in like a marketing framework. Yeah. So that, you know, that's one possible area of optimization. Another is this top logo and city skyline, which will go unnamed. So not one image, but two images in the place of one. You know, instantly kind of say this isn't from a person. And then it starts by saying, you know, we just need to raise $845 more. Now, that could be a very powerful thing because you have a specific amount. It's obviously not invented, right? But it looks reasonable to reach our fundraising goal of $10,000, going back to, you know, what you just mentioned, Nathan, about our goals versus the donor's goals, right? And you zoom into this text a little bit more, and it's like, you know, it gets a little confusing because it's like actually stacking goals. Last week, we asked for your help to reach our membership goal, and you did it. We never dreamed we'd be this close to our fundraising goal. So it's like, help us reach all of our goals. Like, what's in it for you? And there's a little bit of that down here at the bottom. You know, when you give, it starts doing math again, 70% of your gift to this chapter and 30% sent to the National Foundation. Where else can you go for this sort of stuff? You know, as you get down to the call to action, it's like, can you make it across the 10K, our 10K finish line, right? And it's just an example of like, I think that the real opportunity here is that this organization, I know, has personal relationships with a lot of the people that come to these events, right? Like it's not a huge, I mean, it's a rather large organization because of the city that it's in, but they're actually out meeting these people all the time. Right. So the opportunity,
know the face or have seen the face,
100%, or you know, they've sent your maybe, and this happens a lot with these groups, your membership information. You'll have like a liaison, right, that you can go back and forth in, and like you'll get tickets to events, but that doesn't come across in the appeal. And then finally, the last thing on this email was the link, there's a big line that kind of makes a break in the email, then a big link, and it linked just straight to the homepage and not even to a giving page. And it said the URL of the homepage. And so, that was an opportunity, because if you're going to call someone to action, it says just $845 more. The word donation is linked, but there's not like a logical, like, where do I click to give? And if you're going to click the next thing, it's going to be a link to the homepage, and you have to click the donate page. And we know the more friction you put into that process, the more likely people are going to fall out of your funnel. Right. So just some things, I like this example because it is an organization actually sending this out. And it's sending it out almost like the organization became self-aware and sent the email itself, right? Yeah. So a couple things to be optimized in that, and a couple things that you can take and look honestly at yourself and say, hey, are we doing any of these things? Maybe we should test this, right? I don't want anyone to take this wholesale just from us kind of riffing on it. Like, this is all backed up by research. We put as many experiments in here as we can, but take this and test it and actually prove that it will provide a lift in your fundraising. It'd also be a great thing to send to your boss or your board or whoever you're going to send to say, hey, we're actively trying to do better at this fundraising thing. So
here's a fun one. There's a bunch of these emails in our aggregate inbox, and they're kind of fun. I'm calling this I don't have a fun title for it, other than we need to know that people give to authentic humans. It's not just to people, it's to authentic people. This isn't a nonprofit. This is actually a for-profit trying to
consulting business. Yeah,
trying to solicit some business. But let's read a little bit of the copy. Hey, I'll make this quick. If you have zero interest in delegating Facebook ads, you can stop reading this right now. We've actually caught up with the backlog of clients and are hungry to help more. I've got 3 spots available for May. If you're ready to burst through the revenue plateaus, let's get some clarity. And then as it continues, it just gets a little bit more inauthentic and a little bit more sales. And it's really like kind of just trying to say, like, I'm a little bit better than, I think I'm better than you are. You need to come to me. You need to come to me if you want to make this impact, if you will, or have this type of impact.
Yeah.
And it's not an authentic human relationship. So you can do all the right things in your design to make it look human. Mm-hmm. You can even write in a way that maybe sounds human, but you don't really want to be caught in that like 30-minute conversation with a car salesperson who's trying to like force something on you and get you to upsell and all the upgrades and all this stuff.
Yeah.
No one wants that conversation. You want to have an authentic conversation with a real person who cares about you and your needs. Yeah. I don't know what the results are on this email, but I think it's something interesting at least to think about as you are writing your copy. Do you want to take this type of like pushy salesperson type of approach to try to, spring out as many dollars as you can, or do you want to build an authentic relationship that lasts over time?
Yeah, it's a great point. And, there's a line there in the end. If you're a fence sitter, a tire kicker, or hem and haw about every little detail in your biz, don't sign up. And I understand what's trying to happen there. It's like you're creating like negative space. Like if you're, someone would be like, well, I'm not one of those, so I should sign up. But it can also come down as kind of like, for lack of a better word, like talking down your nose at someone. It's like, I understand like the segment that this person is trying to activate. Yeah. But I think that you have to remember when you speak like a human, you will be judged on how those come across. And this may actually work as marketing language, but when it comes from a human, it feels very like kind of puts you on your heels. And it's like, oh, is this for me? And especially if that's a reflection of a marketing consultancy, it's like, oh, is this how you're going to talk to my donors? Like that sort of concept. So.
Totally. Yeah, so not trying to say that this is right or wrong. Maybe it's really effective for them, but it's certainly something to think about as you try to dial in that humanized tone. This is also interesting too. If you're taking this approach, it does feel inauthentic to add like 100 line breaks before your unsubscribe link. Maybe that's not. Maybe you don't do that. We don't have a test for that though. So here's a quick little experiment just to show maybe some of the impact of this. Again, we like to think we're smart marketers, but we have to test in order to know what actually works. And so we thought it would be great to really focus on the subject line of this email to talk about this free limited time offer. You can get this course. It's going to be awesome, because who doesn't want free stuff? And it's limited time where it's high urgency. But we actually tested this against a very different subject line, a lot more empathetic, a lot more human. That says a free copywriting training class for you. So it's not focused on like this pushy salesperson, maybe inauthentic, opportunistic language. It sounds empathetic and human, and that led to a 42% increase in registrations for the course. not just an increase in opens or clicks, but actual registrations. So consider taking the more authentic, humanized, empathetic approach. It may be pretty effective for you.
Nathan, I want to commend you, by the way. I'm going to jump back a few slides here for really committing to redacting things with this sparkle rainbow approach to
I liked it.
PowerPoint. Yeah, I actually do that too, mainly because I don't know how to select another color. So I've really committed to this kind
So
of
you're
like
just locked in on
this
rainbows
like
all
blue
the way
box. Yeah. The next example we're going to look at, if the clicker works here, is John Cornyn, U.S. Senator. I didn't redact this because they're a senator and they kind of put themselves out there, public figure. So let's go, John. There are a couple of things to check out in this email. So political email, first off, is like a different animal, right? I think there are some things that frustrate me about political emails. And I think part of it is endemic because like you're raising money towards this election, you either win or you lose or you, but either way, like it's over. There's like an end date to the life cycle. And I think that is something that's a little bit short-sighted. And maybe politicians do differently now that they kind of morph their fundraising operations into like a nonprofit sometimes afterwards or things like that. But it feels, if you guys get political emails or texts or anything like that, you can see like they're always very urgency focused. So Senator Cornyn, because we know he actually wrote this email, started off with our end of month fundraising report due in less than 24 hours. It has made me realize I'm going to need your help, Tim. We're $7,903 short and it comes at the worst time. So, there's something to this. We've actually run some campaigns that actually like put a person in the position of trying to raise a goal. Cause I think there's something in donors that wants to help that person. Like people give to people. That's a really good example of that. But I also think that, you have to kind of match that with believability, right? So I think this, I would be interested to test this email coming from John Cornyn himself, which it is, as opposed to coming from like his campaign manager, right? Where it's like, hey, I can help the senator, or I can help this guy who works for the senator who's trying to do a good job, right? It comes at the worst time. Like the worst time is because the report's almost due. So it's like, help me look good in front of my boss, which maybe that is a tactic. I don't know. Some of these, even like the number can feel a little inauthentic, even though you mean it to feel authentic if it doesn't kind of come in the right wrapper. Can you chip in now before the clock runs out? And then you have this button that makes my eyes hurt. Like I put Visine drops in after looking at it too long, which says chip in now. I'm fascinated. If you have a test where you've tested chip in, it's kind of a term you see a lot in political fundraising because they're asking for like $1, $2, $3 gifts sometimes just to get people to give. If you have a test like that, put it in the chat because I'd love to add it to our research library. I've always wondered about that language. We should also run that with some of the groups that we run tests with. The button copy for chip in now, first off, some of y'all mentioned this when we asked for how you would optimize an email appeal. This is an experiment that was sending out an ebook. Actually, it wasn't a fundraising ask, but it was saying, get my ebook now. And they said, hey, make sure you claim your free copy, use this link, right? Because there's something to that where it's like, hey, in Gmail, when you're composing an email to your best friend, you normally don't place a button in there. You just paste a link, right? And sometimes you'll link the text itself. Most of the time you just hit Control V and paste the link. And this was an 18% increase in click-through rate. Command V, there you go. 18% increase in click-through rate because like it was clear, right? Sometimes people have images turned off and they can't see this. They can only see the alt text, things like that. So buttons, something you may want to check out, especially really, really bright red buttons. We have to get to work on the issues that matter most to Americans. Right now, liberals are just standing in the way. So I think what may be happening here is like you're just trying to activate like this anger, like those liberals, they're standing in the way, right? But my question is like, well, what issues matter most to Americans? Like, tell me something to care about, right? The issues themselves, I don't think people wake up every morning, they're like, there's issues. If we can only fix those issues, like what issues are they? Like be specific. And then, we've got to be prepared to fight back. We can't afford to be behind. Chip in 175, 50, 25. So this is something that's interesting. Never tested this in an email because most of the time you see this a lot in political emails, but you don't see like multiple gift arrays. So this is actually a reverse gift array. It starts with the largest amount and goes to the smallest. And we've actually tested this with a couple of organizations because we've seen it in the forensic study. I can remember one very large organization that their main donation page started at $10,000 and went down to $15. Wow. And So we tested this standard kind of low amount to high amount versus a reverse high to low. We found there was a 16% decrease in donor conversion. And someone was looking at this experiment and said something really important. They said, if you think about someone's mind when they're going through the gift array, when it's going from low to high, like it does on the left here, they're saying, I can give this much, and maybe I can give this much more, and maybe I can give this much more, right? As opposed to saying, oh, I can never give this much. I could, this is probably still too high, then just right. And like what that does to the psyche of the person, right? Like it's empowering to the donor to let them know they can give more. And that doesn't necessarily mean you start at $1, right?
Sure.
But it also it could feel very defeating. Like, oh, I can only give this much, right? Versus how much can I give? Those are two very different conversations to have. So that may be a test, that you want to run. Will you help me out? Obviously a very, straightforward personal request, right? And John, I think that's meant to coincide with the fact that this is sent from John. Sometimes people put sent from my iPhone on emails. Kind of drives me crazy because we know that's probably not true unless you hit send on your MailChimp send from your iPhone, which is permitted in some ways. But this is really this is an appeal to help the person out, right? And there's not a lot of value proposition given outside of that. What we have seen is that anytime you can make the case for support and increase the value proposition alongside that, then you can actually motivate more people to say yes.
Right. It's good. I got one more. And I don't know if it's one of the best or the worst examples. I have no context for what's happening here other than this was
a legit sent from a organization.
Sent from an organization, from the development team. You can see in the reply to development team at this organization. Let's just read it. Dear Tim, we're pleased to inform you that you've been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl no later.
Has anyone told Tim that he got in?
I don't know.
We should.
We certainly
like to award this email.
It's sent from the character. It's not sent from somebody. Maybe she works now for this organization.
I don't know. It's fascinating, but if only we could see the data behind it, Nathan.
Yeah. So if you are watching and you sent this email, I'd love to know kind of what the data is. But for all the rest of you, I would encourage you to be clear. Sometimes we often say that you don't have to be the most persuasive. You just have to be clear. This, I don't know if it's persuasive, but it's probably just trying to get some type of reply to then have some sort of different conversation, I'm guessing. However, we found that clarity
trumps persuasion.
Yeah.
My personal favorite is the subject line. Are you still on the fence? And then the email, tells me, I'm not sure what fence we're talking about, but apparently, we're in. So the answer is no.
Like maybe they've said this a few different times too, and they're really waiting for that response.
Yeah, fascinating.
So anyway, if you got more info on that, we'd love.
Or if you have the data behind how this email performed. I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to click, but
maybe it's great. Maybe we should test more.
We should do more Harry Potter stuff. Yeah.
That's all we have for you today.
Fun and games.
Examples. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. I'm trying to watch the chat box as well as the Q&A. Please put them in the Q&A. We have some time to answer those. Before we do that, I do want you to know that this Thursday, we're hosting a 6-hour, all-day workshop on email fundraising optimization. So if you have taken any of our courses online, this is our email course, but we're going to teach it live. So Brady and I are going to be teaching this again on Thursday. You'll learn proven and tested principles like what we've talked about today, but we're going to go a whole lot deeper as to what actually can lead to better results in your emails. You'll have live instructors, you'll have virtual classmates. We'll jump into breakout groups where you get to do some hands-on activities and get live feedback on your campaigns and emails. We'll have time for question and answer like we're going to have now, but even more of that. We'll have time for live optimization where Brady and I might throw an email up on the screen behind me here, and we'll kind of break it down and talk about ways you might improve. You can find out more info. You can sign up at nextafter.com/workshop. If you are not a member of the NextAfter Institute, it costs $99. These used to be $299, so we've really discounted these because I know that budgets are super tight this year in particular. Training budgets are always tight, but then especially this year. If you are a basic member, you should have a code in your inbox to get 50% off. If you're a standard member, no charge to you, that's included in your membership. So find out more details, sign up for that, nextafter.com/workshop. Again, that's coming up this Thursday. It's now time for a little Q&A.
Questions.
And I think we have a lot of questions. I see that there's 16 in here. Now there's 17 in here. And the first one is probably the most critical, and it comes from Emily. It's for you, Jeff.
Oh,
Can we have Jeff do more local news announcements?
I'd be happy to do more local news announcements if I knew where you were coming from and some news in your local area. So Emily, anytime.
If you could use your local
I actually
news
suggested right
announcement
before
voice.
this that we build a NextAfter news desk and do all future presentations from that. So we'll see.
Coming
if that,
to you in March.
We'll see if that gets
NextAfter news
taken
desk.
seriously.
I'm going to mark that as answered. How about that? Thanks,
I answer
Emily.
that. That's for sure. Yes.
Tanya has a question. She says, is it better to have a link to give rather than a button, since a button seems more impersonal?
Yeah, so there's a lot of experiments in the library about that. And I think, it's hard to know the full psychology behind it. When people see a link, they often see, there's a couple things that are happening. Number one, they're seeing what is on the other side of that link. There's like a million psychological decisions you're processing. So it's like, I know where this is going. I can see it's relevant. It looks like a person put it in there. Maybe the HTTPS is visible. I can see it's secure, right? I think it also erases some of the questions sometimes of what happens when I click this button, right? The answer is you're going to this website, right? So there are experiments in there that show there are greater click-through rates with emails. If you include a link rather than a button. There are also a couple in there that prove the opposite. So ultimately, it's something that has to be tested.
Right.
What we found is that there is something to that image of the button being placed in there that may affect inboxing or deliverability. And so something we generally point towards putting what we call the raw link in the email, just because we have a lot of data that shows that that's the better way to go.
And then not just measuring clicks either, but also measuring, maybe you get more clicks by using a button. Maybe that's how it works out. But does it actually lead to more donations downstream? Sometimes because it's clearer, you know exactly I'm going to a donation page if you have like a raw URL. But if you have a button that says button or a button that says learn more or something, it's not clear enough. So you might get more clicks.
Right.
But then you hadn't set the expectation that what's coming next is truly a donation page. So you have to measure all those metrics.
Right.
Let's see. We got this question. Maybe this is our second most common question, short of is there a recording? It's what do you do about millennials? Is there any difference in response rates by demographics in terms of, should you send a personal email to millennials or do they want more design stuff? Do you have any thoughts on that? Have you seen any difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of data on that. And honestly, like a lot of the email segmentation tools don't let us segment by age or see that data by age. And maybe you could reverse engineer it through Google Analytics if they are clicking and kind of understand that. But, everything, there's a lot of research data about millennials and Gen Zers that shows that like they're less impressed by brands. They care more about personal experiences and unique experiences. And that being digital natives, they can kind of see through a lot of the technology. And so a lot of the templated hocus pocus stuff like that sort of data implies that it might not work, but I've not seen any specific data on that.
Yeah. And part of it too is because most people that are giving online are not necessarily like younger millennials.
Yeah. I mean,
starting to trend that way a little bit as millennials are aging up. However, most of the money that is coming in is largely through boomers and older.
Sure. Which, even further reinforces the fact that you may have to strip things down to make them easily understandable by someone who is not a digital native, right?
True. True. Question from Nicola. What'd she say? So would we put our own name in the subject line? I assume you mean more the sender line. Basically, who is it that we should be sending from? I believe it's the core of this question.
That's a great question. I think that, there are times when a CEO or an executive director of an organization should send an appeal, right? I think there can be like a good mix.
Sure.
But what I would suggest is that you should send the email from someone, number one, who's able to reply. And so that requires a little bit of buy-in.
Yeah.
I had an executive director call me one time and he seemed to be very upset. He said, "Jeff, you've caused me great trouble today." I was like, "I'm sorry." And he said, "I've got all these emails in my inbox." And what had happened was a member of his team, instead of putting a kind of catch-all inbox reply to email, they'd actually put his actual email. So we've all had this happen if you've ever done this, but you hit send and all of a sudden, bam, first you get the like 3,000 out of office replies and then you start getting the real replies. And I was like, okay. And I just waited. I didn't know what he was going to say. He's like, but I love it. He's like, I never get to talk to donors like this. This is awesome. And they're very complimentary and all these things. So, you know, sending the email from a human is half of the battle, as G.I. Joe used to say. I think the other half is being able to actually receive the emails and kind of completing the loop for a person that someone else is on the other end of this by replying or helping them. You know, Brian Carroll, a friend of ours, always says the best marketing helps people. And I think sometimes that's what we're doing is we're sending email trying to market to these folks, and they may write back and say, I have a question. What fund is this going to? If I do this, like if we don't reply to those, how are they going to get those questions answered? They won't, which further reinforces, despite all the tactics, that it's an organization sending an email, right? So I would say you can put your own name in there. That's great. And there's a question below that I saw that said, does this have a kind of a diminishing returns? Like, did you get a kind of initial novelty bump? And I think that goes hand in hand with you know, this is more what we're talking about in this humanization of emails is really reducing emails channel for marketing and increasing it as a channel for communication. And that is something that requires organizational buy-in, right? So yes, novelty bias exists everywhere. You're going to see sometimes something that worked one time kind of become normalized and it doesn't have the same pop that it used to, which is why it's important to statistically validate your tests so you know that it's going to work, you know, for most of people all the time, right? But it also requires an organizational commitment. I think this affects how we build our organizations. But I also think that I know that when we commit to things like this, your email engagement goes up, you know, and then I think that I know that HubSpot is getting ready to institute this, but you see platforms starting to be able to track replies, right? Like how many people are writing back, because that becomes a two-way street, right? And so, yes, I think you should send your email to put a button on it from a person who is able to answer the email, or at least to an email inbox where someone can answer it on behalf of maybe your CEO or ED. And then also, yes, you may see that over time this declines, but the thing that you hope wouldn't decline is the feeling or the understanding that you have with your donors, you know, to be able to communicate on a two-way street with them. You kind of open that door, right? So,
and in some ways you're going to get a lot more grace from people too, because you have a personal connection. Other times even just sending, you know, emails about webinars and training and stuff, people kind of pour their hearts out, even if it's about fundraising and difficulties and stuff. But especially with the cause you're related to and focused on, people share a whole lot, which can give you some interesting insights about your donors.
Absolutely.
As well. I do owe someone an apology. Carol, I owe you an apology because she says in the chat, what do we do about, you know, people that do respond with the question? She says, this is actually real. I sent a response to one of your staff members after a canceled webinar and I never got a response. So Carol, I'm sorry, we missed that one. We're also trying to do our best to get as many responses out as we possibly can. We missed you. And
we have to take that 100% response rate down to 99.9999999.
No, I'm so sorry. Okay, next question in here. We talked about when you just mentioned a little bit. Let's see.
I think we have time for one more, right?
Probably. Let's do one more. Question from, let's see, we talked about that. Okay, let's do this. Question from Sophie. These emails focus on asks or donation asks. Should the same principles apply to newsletters, to stewardship emails, to cultivation emails? Should we mix it up with design for some of those? I know we have a few experiments related to that, but I wonder what you've seen with some of the organizations you work with.
Yeah, I think that the principle, you know, it works well when applied to an ask, because we've seen that when there's a person at the other end, that people are more likely to give. But we've seen the same thing with cultivation. In fact, we have a longitudinal experiment that we like to cite where that specific organization that was seeing that declining file health, they said, how do we fix this? And we said, well, you have this blog, you post a couple times a week. Let's start sending a weekly email from a person saying, hey, I wanted to send you this. A lot of times because we post these blogs and never actually send them out to our file, right? And so they would write an email every week, as I think her name was Ashley, a member of this organization. They would say, I hope you're having a great week. And they would give some relevant context to what was happening that week and send out the blog posts. And it did actually reverse the trend of email engagement for them and increase inboxing because people are clicking, they're writing back, they're engaging with these emails. So these were just cultivation emails, no ask. To the point that she actually mentioned she was going on maternity leave and people sent her baby gifts, right? So like there's a real connection that people make through email, and it's not this like one-sided, email blaster machine where you just kind of line them up and knock them down. But I think it underlies something that we all really want, which, we want to be able to talk to everyone. We know we can't.
Yeah.
The good news is not everyone will write back, right? You start doing the math and it's like, hey, you get a 25% open rate. That's good. It means 75. I mean, that's a good open rate, but that also means that 75% of people are not going to write back to you.
Yep.
I don't know what the average reply rate looks like. It can be daunting if you have 1 million people on your email file.
Right.
But really the principle that we're trying to put in place, I think what's actually happening that is engineering some of these lifts and donor results is trust. Like you said, email marketing demands trust, and you have to help people not market to them, right? They want to be communicated with, not marketed to. No one wants to be the target of marketing.
No.
To be honest, Nathan, that's why when we hired you, your position was called optimization evangelist.
Right.
And then you went rogue and changed it to director of marketing. So maybe we have to rework that. But I think what we're trying to do is like drop the facade, like get the distance between you and the prospect as minimal as possible by allowing them to communicate with you at any time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. This has been super helpful. I hope it's been helpful for all of you, especially to have Jeff's perspective as well. Thank you for giving us an hour plus of your time. It's not lost on me how much effort that could take, especially in the midst of busy fundraising seasons and all the campaigns and projects that you have going on. I'd encourage you, if you want to dive deeper, I know there's a bunch of questions we didn't get to. If you want to dive deeper, you can actually get certified in email fundraising optimization this Thursday. So check out that workshop. That link is on your screen. I'll shoot you a note here in a little bit with that link as well. Stay tuned to your inbox around 5 p.m. Central for a link to the recording. But we wish you all the best. We're rooting for you and all the best in your email fundraising endeavors. Remember that people give to people, not email machines. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks.